All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Entrepreneurship Sucks podcast with Kevin and Josh. Today, we have an incredibly special guest, Mr. Shaun Clark, co-founder of Go HighLevel. Shaun, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. Thanks for having
Absolutely
me.
happy to have you, man.
Absolutely. We're happy to have you, man. Um, so, you know, um, we like to start things off with, the title of the podcast, right? Because every time we invite somebody, I think everybody has a different reaction. Some people are like, oh, entrepreneurship is amazing. What do you mean? Like super positive. And then other people, they
Sure.
get it. They
Yeah.
get
Totally.
it, right? We struggle, but there's no other option. There's no turning back. So you make it through it, and you get through the tough stuff, and you learn a lot of lessons along the way. So I'd like to start, Sean, by asking you, like, what does entrepreneurship sucks mean to you?
If it was easy, everybody'd do it. So yeah. But some of us have other options, and some of us don't. I consider myself as somebody who doesn't have another option. So it's all I got. So you got to struggle through it for sure.
Awesome. Love it. Well, so let's talk about your entrepreneurial journey. Like, what was your first introduction to entrepreneurship? Like, what first, everybody kind of has that thing that, like, where they caught the bug, right?
Yeah. I grew up single mom, only child, and my mom was relatively highly educated. She was a mechanical engineer, and I sort of thought that would sort of make her immune from the ups and downs of economic cycles, and it didn't. And so it was sort of like, well, if that's what you get for getting the college degree and working really hard and putting in the hours and doing the commutes and all of that, like that stinks, right? That's not a fair trade. So I was like, well, what else is there? And so I tried to kind of explore that. And I think I'm trying to remember kind of the first time I saw this, but at some point I sort of stumbled on, I don't know. I think I thought I sort of, I saw entrepreneurship early on, but I didn't get what it was. And I actually kind of hated on it for a while because it just was too amorphous for me. I'm kind of like no, I want an exact answer kind of guy. And I loved software engineering, and I fell in love with software and its ability to kind of do real things in the real world. And so I think my first business ever was, despite being not creative, doing websites for people. But it was back in the day when you had to like rack a server and you had to install Apache and all this other crazy stuff. So I was really into that part of it. So that was kind of my first entrepreneurship kind of journey. And I just liked the idea that while I didn't know what I was doing, and it was easy to fail. At least when you failed, it was sort of like somewhat in your control, or you could do something about it. It wasn't just purely on the basis of somebody else's arbitrary decision. So I like that. So I think it was probably in high school, and it was definitely like creating servers and web servers and stuff for people.
Cool. Love it. So you had a few clients, you had a little bit of success, and that was it, right?
Yeah, I was working at, I had an internship at Intel. And then after that ended, I was working at Staples. And I was working in the computer repair department. And then I started this little business on the side. And I just remember growing it to the point where I could leave. And the manager at Staples was so mad at me because he really needed somebody in that department, and he didn't really have anybody else. So, but yeah,
You were
so that was
clearly really
my,
good at it, right? So you were
well, I don't know if I don't know if that's the good thing. Back then, you didn't actually have to be that good, but
yeah. Okay.
I was good enough. I was good.
Yeah.
Fake it till you make it, I say. So
Cool.
enough that I could leave my Staples job.
And so you left the Staples job, and so tell me about the internship at Intel. Like, how did all this transpire for you?
Well, I've always wanted to be. I've wanted to work since forever. So, like, my first job, I remember making friends with a guy in school whose mom owned the Baskin and Robbins in the mall, because that was the only place I found where you could work when you're 14, and you could only work like I don't know, it was like some small amount per week. Like, so I'd work like four. Oh, you could never work a full shift, so I could work like 4 hours at a time. I think it was like 20-hour. So then my mom would drive me to the mall on Saturdays and Sundays, and I would just work at Baskin and Robbins.
Yep.
And then when that was like a summer gig, and then when summer ended, it was like, okay, now what can I do? And so I was just always doing that. And then I found out that Intel, of all places, offered internships to 14, 15-year-old kids. So then, of course, I had to make friends with a girl who also had an internship, but also a car. And so she was, wherever she is, I would love to thank her someday, but she would studiously drive me out there for no other reason than she was being nice every day for months and months and months and months.
That's awesome.
And so that was awesome.
You were 14?
I think I was 15 at that time. Yeah.
You were lucky
So-
enough to find a job, over the table at 14. My first job when I was 14, I was working in the summertime. I got up at 5 a.m. and waited in the dark for my boss's son to come pick me up in his freaking monster truck. And he had this Dodge Ram with like 30-inch tires, blasting heavy metal at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I worked on a farm. And it was
This all sounds very above board and safe.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, I was 14 years old, and I was making like $350 a week, and I got out of work at noon. I was,
you're probably
it was me and 3 middle-aged Jamaican guys working on this farm.
Yeah,
But it was great.
I did a gig. I'm trying to remember, in there somewhere at a warehouse, and it was through a temp agency. And I think somebody at the temp agency didn't bother to look at my birthday.
Yeah.
And so, it was me and like 40-year-old guys at a warehouse pulling stuff off the shelf, and picking and packing and shipping. And then that didn't last very long, though. I think it was only a couple of weeks, because the temp agency said, well, if you don't like this job, you can call and you can just, you can ask for a different one. And I was like, okay, cool. So I did it for 2 weeks, and I thought, hey, this is 2 weeks. I gave it a try. So I called up and I was like, hey, I'm ready for that different, better job now. And then I think they promptly ushered me out the door at that point, because they realized that they'd employed someone underage. So
Send your application to the next place.
But yeah, it was okay. I mean, as fun as it was to go out on the smoke breaks with these guys and, and watch them, it was a good lesson for me. It was like, this is where I don't want to be at this age. That's for sure. So I better find a different path.
Wow. Absolutely. Cool. Love it. And so, the Intel internship that lasted, you said, a couple years?
I think that lasted, these were like very, official things. So I think it was like a year or something. It was like one school year. And then I don't know, I think after that, at some point I find my way to a marketing agency, because I finally was able to, so like at Intel and stuff, I was just like it's like, it was cool because I was like on the floor with these super high power execs and doing, but I was like schlepping stuff. I wasn't like, it was like, take all these, it was in a motherboard division. So it was like, take all these motherboards and go throw them in the trash and, whatever, sweep this up. And it was fine, and it was cool. But then at some point I was like, look, I really want to be a software engineer. So how can I get to that place? So this marketing agency offered me a chance to I think I was about 16. So I finally had a car. And so I could, it was a decent drive, probably like 45 minutes, but they had big clients like Oracle. And this is actually kind of cool. So what these guys had done is they were a direct mail house. So they were like sending out mailers, right? And they would do it for like, HP for the new printer or whatever. But what the CEO had figured out is if you put a 4-digit or 5-digit alphanumeric code on the thing and a prize, like back then it was like win an iPod, right? Mm-hmm. And then you had a website attached to it, invariably the way this worked with every company at the time is you would send out 1 billion cards, right? And to this massive list. And then you have the sales team of 10 people. And it's like, well, who do we call, right? Mm-hmm. Well, when you have the website and you have people register, here's a genius idea. Call the people who bothered to register on the website. Yeah. And so this was like, at the time, a massive innovation. And so you named the tech company, they all came running. So Microsoft and Oracle and all these people. And so they were a hot company for a minute. And then they went from, when I got there, like 50 employees to 200 employees. And I basically worked there throughout the rest of high school. And then it was so hopping that and I remember this was like never had been done before. They let me work remotely from college, just because they needed every hand they could. And I was making websites. So that was really cool. And then of course you guys aren't probably this old, but there was this thing called the .com crash, and they got munched in that, but it was awesome because I got to learn what it was like to kind of see an entrepreneurial journey from the ground up, and really see somebody do something interesting and find an edge and really, attack an existing market in a different way. Plus I got to, at some point I did decide I better go to college. My mom was pretty insistent, and it was cool to have, every other kid was like, I work at the sub shop or the pizza shop or whatever. And I'm like, oh, I work at my dorm. I'm on this fast T1 internet stuff and I'm writing websites. It's pretty cool to say.
Hey, that was awesome. That was an amazing story. So I don't want to glaze over though. That was the moment where you noticed that you can attack an existing market with a different
Yeah.
edge. And how
Yeah.
important of a lesson was that?
Yeah. And I think, everybody comes from a different place, but I loved my mom dearly. I think she did an amazing job, but I always noticed that, like, okay, if I do want to own a business, you're an engineer, this is kind of your path. You don't really know, you can't really teach me a lot. And so I got a little too hung up, I'd say, on this idea that I needed a mentor, or I need someone to like teach me all this stuff. Right. And so, working at the marketing agency, I was mostly interested in talking to the CEO, and it turned out he was the best CEO to have, because he was super like the man's man, and he would drive, he drove a Ferrari to work, and or his Ducati or his Porsche, but he was the kind of guy who would then take the Ferrari out to the track on the weekends and drive it down to the tires fell off. Like, he was a real, like, exciting, cool CEO, and he had some fancy house in the library with the door that everything a 17-year-old kid just dreams of. And so
he's like James Bond for you, right?
it was for me. It
And
was
that's
like
how you
James
show up
Bond,
to the
sure.
office now,
And,
isn't it?
oh yeah, totally. I'm in my house. Yeah, exactly. I own a Rivian, which I love, but yeah, it's about as fancy as I get. But no. So I ultimately though, so from there, he gave me some of his time, which was awesome. So I really appreciated that. And then I moved on from there and ended up going, when I got laid off from that job, because the .com crash, they laid off like 100 people, and sure enough, they let off the college kid. Imagine that. I ended up back at my mom's house, and there were no jobs. I mean, this is like no jobs, like .com crash, economy in free fall. And so I basically was literally, I walked out, I printed out resumes. I walked out my front door, and I was like, I know where McDonald's is, so I'll end there. I love McDonald's, so worst case, I like the food, so I could work there. And then I just went door to door to door to every business in that community, and I ended up in this weird, funny place where basically it was an office building, and this guy had what at the time was just a residential long distance business, which you wind back in history, and there was this federal law that said, look, first of all, there were no cell phones, so that's how old I am, but there was this law that said, look, when you move into your apartment, right, and you get a phone line, you cannot buy long distance from the same company you get local, because at the time prior to that, there had been this big breakup of Ma Bell, because there was a monopoly, basically, right? So anyhow, he had built a whole long distance business off the back of this thing, and he had 10,000 customers, all these consumers, and it was all sold through Yellow Pages. This really dates me now, but this all had built this big business for this guy. But he had sort of seen this had been going on for a long time. I didn't know anything about it. I was young enough not to know anything about it. It just had happened sort of underneath me. But what then happened is he realized, like, the gig is up. Like, it's been years since this all happened. This law is going to change. This sort of an antiquated system. So he decided he was going to go out and he was going to start an answering service business, which, if nobody knows what that is, it's basically taking inbound phone calls for small businesses. And what was really innovative about his idea was, at the time, answering services were purely local businesses. They were in every town and every city, but there's no national, because at the time, long distance was very expensive. So if you wanted to call grandma, it was very expensive to do it. But he had these LD contracts through his long distance business that made them very inexpensive. So he had all the makings of creating this sort of centralized answering service. But what he didn't have is he didn't have what I knew, which is, I knew that websites were the thing of the future. I knew that Google was the thing, right? All this. So it was this weird, funny combination. I came and worked there for the summer as like an IT guy, helping fix computers, and because he had a whole staff of people. And in the midst of this, he kind of figured out that I was relatively intelligent. And then so when they went to go start the answering service business, what ended up happening is I said, look, you need to have a website. You need to market online. He said, that's crazy. I'm going to go buy the biggest Yellow Page buy I've ever done in my life. And I'm going to do what I already know. But he was smart enough to say, well, I'll let you try this website thing. So I went and found somebody I knew at the marketing agency who had done a website. We put one online. And then literally right as we launched this business, this funny product comes out called Google AdWords. And of course, back then, if you were alive, you could bid on any key, think of the most expensive term imaginable, like free money or whatever, or, credit card. You could bid on all that stuff for like a penny or 2 pennies or something, right? And so sure enough, off the back of that, fast forward 12 years later, and we had built, a $30 million enterprise with hundreds of employees. And we'd built, the largest national answering service ever. And it was an incredibly profitable business. And we had, in the middle of that, we filled up a whole building full of people. And then we figured out actually how to put them at home, which again, at the time, the only person that we could even find on the internet who had done it was JetBlue. And so it's a very innovative thing. And we got to write a lot of code doing that. We opened a big office in India. We hired hundreds of people, and all of that. And I had a small interest in that company, which was exciting to me because that was really where I sort of felt like, wow, I'm finally on my way. I'm an owner in a big business, all those things. And then after 12 years, sadly, all of that came to a crashing end for me. And I sort of had to start over from zero. So it was a pretty crazy ride.
Yeah, sounds like it. And so at what age were you when all that came crashing down?
Let's see. I dropped out of college. I dropped out of college. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big piece.
So I started that business with him while I was in college, and I would literally drive an hour one way or an hour and a half one way every Sunday or Saturday, and we would work in the office, and then I would drive home. So, and then as the business started to get going, he at some point, and retrospectively, looking back, I think this was a little more about him than me. But he sort of said, "Listen, if you want to be part of this business, you really need to commit." And I was like, "Oh no, what do I do?" So I remember I went to my mom, and she gave the best advice. I said, "Look, I think I want to drop out of college to do this. What do you think?" And she said, "Well, it may be a terrible idea, but the worst case scenario is you'd always go back to college later." So I was like, that's all I needed to hear. So I was off. I was like, I'm out. I quit. I tried briefly to go to college. I was like, like a lot of colleges, they're in these small cities, right, that are outside your major population center. And of course, the business was in the major population center. And I thought, it's a state school here, and there was a state school there, and I thought maybe I could just kind of jump. But then they told me they'd put me back a year, and I said, screw that, I worked too hard, so I'm not doing that. So I said, okay, I'll just go hardcore at the business, and worst case, I'll go back to college later. And so I think I was probably 20 at the time, maybe 19, and then 12 years after that.
Wow,
That's insane.
Awesome. So you're in your early 30s now, right?
Yep.
And everything came crashing down. And so what was the biggest?
Yeah, so I'd gotten married. I'd met my wife. I'd got married, and I'd had my son.
Mm-hmm.
And I woke up and realized, I really want to do a lot more, and I really want to own a lot more. And so I tried, at the time, it's kind of a weird thing to go, having no backup plan because you'd burn your college, and that's 12 years in the rearview mirror. So that's interesting. A little hard to just pick that up. You now support a family. My wife works, but still, it was a 2-income operation. I just had, we have a little baby, but you still know you want to do more. So, I called my mom, and she then gave me the worst advice. I said, I really want to do more. She said, "Oh, well, you can do that when maybe when you retire." And I wasn't hearing that. So, I went to my partner at the time, and I said, "Hey, I really want to do more." And, at some point he, with a lot of pestering, he eventually said no. And I was really left with a choice. And I think this was a really key moment for me in my life, because I mean, really retrospectively, I had been lying. I kind of knew I wanted to do more for those 12 years prior. Mm-hmm. And I really knew, and I knew that I had sort of asked along the way, but never really quite pushed the envelope. And I think what I had done is just sort of retreated into the safety of, well, at least I am what I am, and I have what I have, and I should be happy with that. But, I think it's funny. I found that I could lie to myself about being happy. But when you have a child, for me, I was like, okay, someday I'm supposed to tell this kid that he needs to do, go for it, pursue your dreams. Don't let anyone hold you back. Don't take no for an answer. Don't worry about the risks, and here I am, lying to myself about the fact that I'm not willing to do the same. And so at some point I saw the stupidity in that, and I just refused to, be dishonest and lie to him. And so I knew I had to do something. And so, it was very, it was very tenuous at the time. I made a lot of mistakes, but I ended up starting a software business on the side in a totally different area. It was in accounts receivable automation. It was a company called Invoice, and it basically automated invoice reminders. And now, of course, it didn't start there. It started as an appointment reminder business, which I remember taking this to like an incubator, like a startup incubator, because I wanted to like talk to some smart guy who was there. And I finally got to tell him my idea, and then he eviscerated it in front of my face. He was like, "That's a terrible idea. Everyone's done that. I've seen that 1,000 times. You really need to do something else." And I was very demoralized. And so, but I had a dinner that night with my wife and her she's an accountant, and their accountant friends. And I told them about this as I'm crying into my sushi, as I recall. And they said, "Oh, well, we have clients who their businesses go out of business because their invoices don't get paid. Maybe you should, like think about reminding people to pay invoices." And like every great idea I've ever heard, my first initial reaction is, "Well, that's stupid. That's not going to work." But I had nothing else going on. So I was like, well, let's just try it. And turns out that is a phenomenally important and big issue. And, I didn't know how to get distribution because I could write the code all day long, but it was like, how do you get customers? Well, it turns out invoices live inside things like QuickBooks and Xero. So I integrated with those, and all of a sudden, pretty close to overnight, I had customers. And, I remember, a lot of trials and tribulations, but then eventually, as that business started to grow, I had to come, it was a weird, funny thing. I felt I was definitely hiding all of this from my day job. And once my day job found out, they were none too pleased. And so at that point, a lot of legal threats ensued, and it was a very scary time for me. But it ended up that essentially I had to leave, and but I was able to pursue what I had been doing, and and then fast forward 5 years of that, and I grew it to about 1,000 customers, and it was acquired by a Canadian payments company through a cold call of all things. Not enough money to retire.
You cold called them, or vice versa?
Well, no, they cold called me. I mean, I didn't know anything about it.
Were you even trying to get acquired?
Actually, I mean, I'd gotten. Oh no! I mean,
what happened?
I wasn't that smart. Yeah, I mean, it was actually like a business broker, and I had gotten lots of calls, from people who, from venture capitalists and from all these things, and I didn't really understand the game at the time, but it was always like a very demoralizing experience because they call you like with a lot of like excitement and as though they know you and that you're destined for great things, and then they look at your numbers and they're like, never mind, you're not good enough, and you're like, wait, but I'm killing myself here. I don't get it. And I, you'd be like, well, why the hell did you call me? It's like, if I'm that lame, just leave me alone. Let me be lame. Just don't hurt my feelings. But, that's just how the game goes. But anyways, this business broker called, and he had said sort of the same thing. Like, oh yeah, don't worry, I can sell your business. I'm like, yeah, right. Whatever, buddy. But his pitch was great. He's like, well, listen, you don't have to pay me anything. He's like, you name the price and you sign this little document. I will go do all the work. And if I sell your business in the next 6 months, you owe me like whatever the commission percentage was. And so I thought, I'm going to name a number that's super big and no one will overpay. And I'm going to sign this thing and he's going to go the heck away and I'm never going to hear from him again. And, and then I signed it. And then next week he came back with 3 offers. So it clearly told me I put the number is way too small. That's the number thing I learned. And then, and it wasn't that easy. I mean, it took months, and there was a big blow up with payments in the middle where I ended up having to fork over $80,000 to deal with some payments issue. On and on and on. But eventually, it all came out, and I ended up consulting for them for a year. I met the head of support, who is now the head of support for HighLevel, who's amazing.
Look at that.
And it gave me enough runway to kind of do my next thing, which is HighLevel.
Wow. So yeah, let's dig into that, right? Like, so you're consulting for them for a year after they acquire your business. And so like, when did the concept before the business for HighLevel, like when did that happen?
Oh, I mean, I always knew I wanted to do something else, eventually. What I learned in that experience was I really wanted to build a business that stood on its own.
Mhm.
Because while the integrations were nice and it was a good way to get customers, I also was in effect an add-on. I felt like to QuickBooks and Xero, and I couldn't really. I mean, for me, I couldn't figure out like, well, how can I make this bigger or do something more, right? And I'm sure someone else smarter, and I think the people who acquired me, that was their intention. But for me, it was like, well, what can I do with what I've learned? So I met a lot of small businesses through this process. And so the first thing I said, it's funny because marketing agencies always do the same thing. It was like, oh, I should niche down. I should pick one of these niches that I'm dealing with and I should work to do something there. But I knew I needed help. So I thought, well, who's the best software engineer I've ever met in my whole life? And it was a guy named Varun, who's my CTO and co-founder today. And I had met him way back in the answering service days. He was part of the crew that we hired in India at the time to build software for the answering service. So he was working on another app at the time, which I knew was a stupid app and was going to fail. So I just sort of said, all right, well, call me when your app fails. Let's keep in touch. And I'm kind of like that. So, and then I kind of sort of got to work. I was still consulting, and so I just sort of started thinking about ideas. And then, sure enough, a month or so later, he called and he's like, "All right, you're right. This is not going anywhere. What can we do?" Yeah, exactly. And so at first I was like, you know what? Let's do a mobile invoicing app. So we made an invoicing app on Android, and at the time people were charging for them. We thought maybe we can make money on the money, right? So we did all that. We put it out. That failed. So then I was like, okay, never mind. Okay, let's do a service business management platform, like a House Call Pro kind of thing. And so we wrote all that, and then I showed it to a bunch of the customers I had worked with at Invoice Sherpa, and they said, "This is cool, but we've seen this before, and it has like half the features of our existing version that we use today. So why would we buy this?" And I was like, good point. Oh crap. Now that took us 6 months to build, so that was kind of a bummer. I learned you should really try to ask people before you spend all that time being an idiot and building something no one wants. Just hot tip.
That's a good nugget right there.
There you go. And so that's like, okay. And then again, I am a super not creative person. Like that's the most important thing to know about me. My capacity for original ideas pretty close to zero, but I kick butt at listening to other people's good ideas and figuring out and kind of seeing through the story. So, lots of people will show up on podcasts like this and they will say, "Oh, I'm a big shot and I make all this money and I'm super successful." But when you really dig into it, they make no money at all and they're super unprofitable and their models suck. And some people actually do make a lot of money. And so if you can figure out the guys and gals who are really making good money or have a model that's scalable, you can find good businesses. And so I listened to a lot of entrepreneurial podcasts at the time. And shout out to Nathan Lotka. That was a podcast I listened to a lot. And, I liked his podcast because they was all about like numbers and revenue and, ARPU and things. And it's all SaaS. I'm a SaaS guy. What can you do? And so I listened to a couple of interviews one with the CEO of Podium and the other with the CEO of Bird Eye. And I thought, and I talked to a lot of the customers, and one of the big things I'd heard in my previous business is we want more customers. And when I listened to those guys and I listened to the customers, I thought, really, that is the closest thing I personally believe could get these small businesses customers faster. It's really reputation management. And then I thought, okay, well, how could we make it different? So all the way back to how can you attack an existing market in a different way? And I thought, you know what? We need to do SMS because I think SMS is the future for customers.
Callback right there.
Right. And I was like, SMS is going to be the future of customer communication. So let's take reputation management and SMS. So we took our existing code base that we'd worked on for 6 months, we pivoted it, and we started selling it into, essentially the customers that we'd already been talking to. And there was a lot more interest out of the gate. I'll tell you that. Now, what we didn't really have a clue on though is, so we started selling it and people loved the demo, they would buy it. And then all of a sudden they would call up and they would cancel. And for two software engineers, the first thing you're going to say is like, well, what feature are we missing? Right. And, they would say, well, you aren't missing a feature. I just don't have time to learn this or to implement it in my business. And really right there, we hit this really crazy crossroads. Like, it was scary because we're like, for two software engineers, like the worst thing you could ever imagine hearing. Like, no, it's perfect, but I won't use it. right? And, and we would say, well, what about, the fact that this will get you more reviews and get you to the top of Google and then, it was a lot of like, yeah, that's true. But I also am a plumber. I got to go jump in the van and go replace a toilet now. So it was like, crap, what do we do? And lucky for us, we had integrated with a product called Dr. Chrono, which is a online EHR. And we had like this, one of those guys who puts like a needle in your arm after you get drunk for the night and they put fluids in your
therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, right. One of those crazy dudes, which apparently people use, but I think is nuts.
Yep.
Well, we had one of those guys and he had a marketing agency and we literally got a phone call randomly one day from the marketing agency. And it was like, hey, my name is Rob and Alex. I'm just calling because I wanted to find out what you're doing for my client and this and that. And I remember being like, and again, best ideas ever. I'm always the same way. I'm like, why would we talk to this guy? He's not even paying us. He's not even our customer. But, we were kind of like beside ourselves as to what to do. So we were like, all right, well, let's get on a call. Let's see what's up. And let's talk to this dude. And he just changed our lives in such a fundamentally great way. I mean, first he said, oh, wow, this is amazing. What about, can I buy this for my 80 clients? And we're like, well, that's cool. And then 2 weeks went by, he didn't cancel. And he kept saying like, hey, can you add this? Can you add this? Can you add this? Which to you software engineers is like magic, right? We're like, heck yeah, watch this. Boom, 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 boom. And so we literally just kept eating up all the people he gave us. And, and then he was like, oh, can I show this to my friends and this and that? And we ended up going to our first mastermind. Shout out to Rob Bailey for that. And we were only supposed to get up there for like 20 minutes, do a little dog and pony, but we took over the whole event. We sold every agency in the room, which was 40 at the time. And what we learned through all of this is that if you really want to help those SMBs, you really need to help the people who help the SMBs, right? And very, very, right off the bat of that, we didn't know where this would go by any means whatsoever, but we sort of figured, well, here's a market that is underserved, the agencies themselves. And, when you talk to them, they would say, well, yeah, I buy this product and that product. I put my heart and soul into it. I get my clients up and running and then I generate a lot of leads and then they fire me for it. And because I give them a spreadsheet of leads and I don't get it, I get them for 2 cents on Facebook or whatever. And I'm like, well, what if, and Robin already knew this, but it was like, well, what if we follow up on these leads automatically and we take them from, hey, I'm a spreadsheet name to, hey, I'm interested, or hey, I'm going to book an appointment, or I did book an appointment. And that's exactly where we started. And we just kind of worked it. I mean, we worked every day with our customers and said, okay, here, we're going to do this automation, and boom, that was massive. It totally changed their businesses. And then it was like, all right, what's next and what's next and what's next? We just kind of followed that through line. And, we early on realized we weren't marketers. We were product and engineers. And so we said, well, what's a model that we can put in place that that allows us to do what we do well, but also helps us get distribution. And so that's how we got onto our affiliate program. And that really, in fact, we actually put it in place at that mastermind. And it's really kind of served us ever since then.
That's awesome. And, clearly Rob is a great affiliate marketer, so that was a good opportunity, right?
It was his first mastermind ever. So, he was, at the time, he was just a really good marketer.
Was it? It was the mastermind that Rob put on that you went to? Nice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It was his first mastermind ever. It was in San Diego. I remember it's at some fancy, I think it's called the Tower Club or something. Ironically, I showed up in that room, that same exact room, for a senior leadership dinner 4 or 5 years later, unbeknownst to me. I was appalled at how much it cost. I remember that. I remember when, before I got there and knew where we were, somebody told me how much that room cost. It was like, I don't know, $500 or something. And I said, can we just go to McDonald's? It's just a lot cheaper. But it was great at the end, because then I was like, well, this is where we launched the business.
Love it. That's awesome. And so, at this point, you're just, you're working, serving the marketing agencies, right? And the part where you're talking about how it was like magic when people ask you to add new features and stuff, I feel like that has been a consistent thing with you guys, right? From the inception. And I didn't know that. I mean, one thing that has always been incredible to me is just a new video every single day from Shaun. It feels like we just dropped a new feature. I'm like, oh my God, how does this guy keep up with all this? But it's awesome. It's incredible to watch. You're amazing at what you do. It reminds me of a story when I worked for Matt, and my journey from I ran a successful e-commerce business, and then COVID hit. My wife got pregnant with twins, and we lost everything as well.
Oh,
And that
darn.
journey brought me back to sales. Um, and I got an email from Billy Jean, and he's like, "Hey, we're hiring closers." And I was like one of 450 people that applied. I made it into the top 25. Flew out there. I had no money. I literally took out two credit cards when I found out I was going to go. I took out two new credit cards just to be able to go. Made
Oh,
it to the top 25. Flew out to Billy Jean's studio. It went through, he put us through a boot camp with all his students, and he gave me the script to read, like role play with him the next morning. The night before, I had to read it in the hotel. Got like 3 hours sleep. And as my first time meeting Billie Jean, it was like intimidating. I'm on stage,
that's
right?
very
Like it was
intimidating.
very intense, right? And then one of the guys that works for him is like this big jack dude, like very intimidating guy. And so I'm on stage and I'm like fumbling through the script. I'm really good, but like not good enough, right? And I lived in Connecticut. And so I made it to the final day. I was in the top 9. He hired 5 people. They were all local. Part of it was he was going to relocate me. I think that that's kind of a bigger ask, right?
Yeah.
And so, I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm like, I didn't get the job. I made it all the way here, and then I have to go home, right? And
Yeah.
I didn't have even enough money to get home. Billie Jean's team paid for my flight home, but in that
They're,
moment,
they're amazing like that, for the
they
record.
they
I
are
mean,
they are amazing.
they actually
Absolutely.
they're very good people.
Yes, absolutely. And I remember in that moment, I'm in the hotel lobby and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to pay because the hotel room ended up costing more than what I had left. And one of the guys that I made friends with during the boot camp who got the role, he stumbled into my hotel room or the hotel lobby, and I'm like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" Because he lived locally and he should have already been on his way home. He's like,
Yeah, right.
honestly, I don't know, dude. Like something just told me to just like take a walk. And he's like, now that I see you, he's like, it's been weighing on my heart. Like as a Christian, he's like, I don't feel you were way better than me. And he's like, I only got the job because I live down the street. And he's like, here, like I paid to be in this program. I paid 10 grand to be in this. Sorry, Cole. I paid to be in this program and I don't need them to place me anymore. Here's the link to like book a call with their team to get them to place you in a role. Right. And I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much. Right. So they're like, how'd you end up on our calendar? You're not even in our CRM. I'm like, well, but here's the story. And they're like, oh, wow, that's awesome. You made it into the top 9 for Billie Jean. They're like, we have a job for you. And that's how I met Matt. And
Oh, that's
Matt
cool.
hired me as his closer. And I tell that whole story because, it now like coming full circle, like I got to be partnered with Matt after working for him. And then, now here we are. And the part that I lost track of what I was going to say. Oh, it reminded me of the beginning of what you were saying about all the new features because I remember when I was working for Matt, he would always tell the story about how you guys met, right? And he was like invoice number 002, and he paid you like 5 grand to like create custom values, and it
Oh
was just
yeah,
like
I
such a
remember that.
pivotal thing for him and for his business and like the start of your relationship, and stuff like that. So I remember that, I look at the stages of all the features, and I'm like, wow, that is such an incredible story from both sides to hear.
That is awesome for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. So, all right, you're servicing these marketing agencies, and then so like, where does where are the ups and downs from then to now? Like, what are the like highs, the lows? Like,
Gosh, it all kind of starts to wash together.
mm,
I mean, we just put our head down and work every day, and we don't do anything different today than we used to do. And I think, I can think of times maybe when like we were worried, oh, so and so competitor is going to put out some feature that's going to take us out because we're not there yet. Or I mean, I was, just due to my previous experiences, I would say I was incredibly, I had a lot of fear in me,
mm,
and I was always afraid of what I didn't know. Because I would say up until I had up until I had left the answering service business, if you had met me, I would have sort of appeared a bit untouchable. I would have appeared kind of like on top of the world all the time, because I sort of felt like I was on my way on this journey that I had sort of predestined for myself, and everything was working out. And it felt like I was partnered with some really good people who were not just my business partners, but one of them was my best man at my wedding. I thought these people were my best friends. I went to their family events. We were very close. I truly believe that they were, we were in this together. And, like when I had asked for more ownership, I felt like I was like, almost like, it's almost like, it's almost like, well, of course, right? Like that's such a reasonable thing to do given how much you've contributed. Maybe we didn't give it to you out of the gate because we didn't know you, but gosh, it's been 12 years and, you've done amazing things. Of course we would want to, be right, do right by you. Right. And when that all ended, it was a big shock to my system. And it was very clear that I think at some level I had been, manipulated for 12 years of my life. And it was frightening because obviously there was all the mechanics of, oh crap, this is all over. But also, realizing that you had been fooled for so long is a pretty stunning feeling, and it's hard to describe, but it's an earth-shattering moment. And so from that lesson, I learned to hell with that. That's never happening again. So, when we started HighLevel, I remember my goal was to have $1 million in cash in the bank at all times, because I was just waiting for somebody to come out of the dark and try to take us down. So I remember early on. So there was a lot of vigilance, I would say, around a lot of those things. But we've been incredibly lucky. I mean, what has brought us here, yes, we kick butt and take names at product and engineering, but we wouldn't be here without our community. So, we are so fortunate to be surrounded by just incredible people who, we have worked hard to support them and help them, but gosh, they have done just as much work to support us and help us, whether, it could be big names that we all know, like Billie Jean, would not be here without Billie Jean. And Rob Bailey, and Rob always will get the first line of credit. Cause he took a risk when nobody else, we didn't ask anybody, but I will tell you, he took a big risk in my opinion, putting us on stage. And so he'll always get my first love for that. And, but all kinds of small names and everyone in between has been incredibly supportive of us. And, there are definitely, times when we have to be cognizant of competition and we're always looking behind us. We don't look in front of us, because the big guys, the reason they suck is because they've always sucked, and that's why we're here. But, fundamentally we have a great tribe, and that's what's always been important to us. And so, there's always hard days, but, I'm also hypersensitive. So when people say, I can't believe this feature doesn't work, or I found a bug, or you guys suck because you aren't as good as so-and-so, I always take that personally anyway. So it's hard for me to really delineate the highs and lows, because I tend to get hung up on even the smallest of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's just my personality. So but honestly, we've been very fortunate to have so much support and love throughout the process, that while it's a lot of work, it's also, I couldn't imagine, serving a better community.
Absolutely. And, the universe demands balance, right? So for every person that's complaining about a feature, there's another person right there in the feed that is singing your praises and absolutely loves.
Oh yeah. I wish I could do
more of those. You've trained your algorithm to torture you.
That way, but yeah.
You've definitely trained.
It's almost like when I see if it's terrible, but it's true. When I see reviews come in, I'm like 5-star, of course, 5-star, of course. Not like, of course we would get that. It's just like, okay, good. I'm just waiting for the 1-star so I can attack that, right? But the 5-star, it's like, I'm just like, oh, thank God, I don't have to deal with that, right? So yeah, it's terrible. But I also think it's sort of what makes us us. We're always on the drive to do better. We're always on the drive to improve. We're always on the drive to not let anybody fall through the cracks. And we feel like, we want to build a product that, serves everybody equally and do a good job for them. And so, a lot of what I do is about seeking out the people that are slipping through the cracks and helping them out.
Yeah. Love it. And there's something huge to be said about your hyper focus on the negative feedback and improving it over and over and over again. Like it's a core value for you. It's a part of the reason HighLevel is so successful, because some people in business, or most people in business, they almost want to ignore or delegate the negative stuff, right? Like, oh, I don't want to handle customer service. And that's the first role that they hire in, because they don't get that dopamine high of like somebody telling them they're great every day. Right.
Right.
And that is so important and powerful.
There's like a lot of corporate stuff around all that too. Right. I think that's, when you first start, you read all the quotes about like, do the unscalable and this and that. And then as you get bigger, it's all of a sudden like, okay, now it's time to systematize and this and this and this. And there's, the reality is actually truth in both. Like my strong advice is keep doing the unscalable things on the back of the scalable things, right? You can't do it all. Like I still love the stories and I of all the people who tell me like I did their onboarding, and I loved those days. Those were so much fun. I don't do onboardings anymore, but I still talk to customers every day.
Yep.
right?
That's how you and I met. You helped me
out
with a Stripe problem, and that's how this entire relationship started. So
I can't even. And
that's a testament to it right there.
I remember none of these things. That's the other fun part about me is I can't remember. People will say, "Hey, do you remember?" Anybody who starts a thing of, "Do you remember when?" I always just say no, because it's true. But it also allows me to keep motoring forward in the moment. So it helps me do that. But you always have to have. You should build a really good system. And in fact, to your point, the first role we ever hired actually was customer service, but not because I wanted to delegate it, but because I knew it was so important, right? And I knew this one of the best people I'd ever met in customer service, and I just wanted to lock that guy down. But I just knew that we wanted to have great customer service, and so for me, it's you still want to do those unscalable things because you continue to learn just as much as you ever did by doing those things about your customer. You don't lose touch, but you also want to make sure that when you're not there, or you are asleep, or you aren't able to scale it beyond a certain point, that you've got a great team there. And we're very fortunate in that we have a phenomenal team.
Yeah, and that's important. I mean, this is, I don't know, my third business venture. Joshua and I, we've been in business together for 11 months, known each other for a few years, ran a sales team together prior to that. But our back end, I made sure that I'm like, look, the delivery, like we haven't even spent a dime in paid ads. And mind you, we're doing pretty well because we have great relationships, great partnerships, right? Great referral partners, everything. But, it's always been more about the delivery than it has been about the marketing for us, right? Like when someone pulls out their wallet, a lot of companies is like they don't, now just move them on to whoever's supposed to take care of them, right? Versus like when someone pulls out their wallet, that's the beginning of the relationship. That's when you start to take care of them. Right. And then, whatever that end result is, I want to over deliver. I want to make sure that they have an experience that's greater than what they expected coming in. Right. That's awesome. And so tell me, like, you're in the Facebook group all the time, making posts, you're, new features coming out, you're having conversations with people like me, probably thousands of people every day in Messenger. I'm like, how is this guy responding to me? I'm like, is this AI? Right? Like, I'm like, there's no way.
Nope.
So
no AI there.
What does a day look like for you? Like, are you getting up at 3 a.m. and going to bed at 2 a.m.?
No, I mean, no. I mean, and honestly, I think being healthy and sustainable is super important. There's definitely times where you're going to go all out and all of that. But I mean, for me, I've always been a lightweight. So like, I remember in college, people would be like, I'm going to pull an all-nighter. I could never do that. It's like, I better study consistently all the time because I'm going to bed at 8 p.m. I'm like an old man or something. But honestly, no, it's just, for me, a day is, I sort of think of my job as making sure that my team and my customer is connected. And like, is there a hole in the funnel where, they were going down support and they popped out someplace and now we're not serving them like we should, or they went all the way through the funnel and the quality wasn't there, and what the heck's going on there, right? Like, just making sure. And then also, a lot of organizations take their I'm trying to think, they're like creators, for us to be engineers, and sort of wall them off, right? Like, I think that if I ask most people, like, hey, could you call could you call and talk to an engineer at HubSpot, or could you call an engineer and talk to them at Google? Like, yeah, that's funny, right?
Yeah.
Good luck. But for us, it's the opposite. It's, and I actually learned this from, there's a great story. The guy who started Kayak, he's long sold out and made lots of money. And I can see why. What he used to do is he made it so that the phone system would ring equally. And so if I'm an engineer at Kayak, if a customer service, if someone said like, this isn't like, there's like, press 1 if something's not working. And if you hit 1, it would ring an engineer's phone and they would pick up and they'd have to deal with it. And his line to those engineers was like, listen, you don't want those phone calls. Make it so that the phone never rings, right? Like, make it so that there aren't ever any bugs. And so we've done a great job doing the same thing here. So our product management team, our engineering teams, they're in the Facebook group. They even have their own product town halls that I have nothing to do with, but it's like, if you want to you want to hear about the social media planner and what's coming next, and you want to tell that team what the heck you want to see, they have a whole town hall. They'll show up and they'll tell you like, hey, here's our roadmap. Here's what we're working on. What do you guys think? What's working? What's not working? All of those things. And the goal here is we really see this as a partnership. We really have always seen our customer as the expert. And the more we can get from our customer, the better we're going to do. We never have seen ourselves as like like these visionary people that know what it is that you need. And, you just stand by, we're coming for you. Like, that's never been our deal. It's always been the opposite. It's like, hey, you guys all know what you need to be successful. How can we extract that out of you in the best possible way, bring it together, and then give it back to you in the form that you always wanted, so you can go out and kick butt and do some amazing things in your life.
Yeah, that's awesome. And a lot of companies, they have their, there's so many things that you said there that was so amazing. But like a lot of companies, they have their KPIs for their sales and for their marketing, but they're not tracking for their client success, right? And they're not, as aggressively like looking at numbers in regards to like, where are the bottlenecks? Where can we improve? That's so impactful. And I know that has a huge bearing on the success that you guys have. So that's an amazing way to approach.
Yeah, we have always, we're fortunate in that our system works this way, but we're able to track the revenue of our customer, and we KPI that number. We have as a whole company goal and we take it and we figure out how it applies to that team. But for each of those product managers, for those engineering teams, their mission is to drive that number up. And if they don't drive that number up, we know that there's a problem, and they're KPI'd around it. They're not going to get a raise. They're not going to get a bonus. They're not going to get the next promotion if they're not driving the revenue up that is being generated by our customers. Yeah, it's the way to go. I mean, yeah. And again, if every day you wake up and say, how am I making my customer more money? Things are going to work out fine for you. Absolutely. I mean, there's no business on planet Earth, I promise, where you're like, your story is, well, I make a ton of money for my customer, but I make nothing. Like, that's never going to be a thing. And it is the right way to think. And you have to remember what your customers use you for, and what their dreams are, what their goals are, and make sure that you're on the, your mission is to make those dreams and goals come true. And for us, it's to help our customers build a business. And we happen to do it through software, but that is what we're here for and how we do it. But that's certainly what the outcome better be. Otherwise,
yeah, ultimately, it all comes back down to that. I mean, I think what's really cool about what you guys have built is that what you've built, it by the very nature of how it's built and designed, you get the utmost opportunity for feedback from not just users, the direct end user of your software, but all the agency owners and their clients as well. So the feedback loop kind of compounds upon itself as more agencies pop out. And so not only are you hearing like the first level of feedback from your direct users, but then their clients providing them feedback. And then so you're able to really work out a bunch 100%. Of kinks in the software stack on the back end very quickly, and then be able to develop those new features. Yeah, very high leverage.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. And I'll say, based on what you said, and I'm like, we kind of did some of this stuff by accident too. Like, but
us too, for the record.
Yeah. So like, we fired our client success manager, and in the process of looking for a new one, our CTO took on the role of client success, and then realized like, this is actually better. Like he needs to be involved in this and groomed in this way he's amazing on the back end, but kind of shied away from like customer facing interaction. And I'm like, no, this is tightening the loop. Like, this is where it's supposed to be, right?
Yeah, totally.
I have a question, and this is just picking your brain at some experience. So obviously you've had a couple of iterations of building something successful multiple times, and then you've had a lot of people from um, partnerships and some of those previous relationships follow you to go high level now, um, and they show themselves worthy. They move up the ranks. They help the company grow in revenue, and then it comes time to, you know, they can get as many promotions as they want. Say that it's like Varun, you know, he becomes your CTO, and then at some point you're looking at giving them equity in the company. At like, what kind of, you know, obviously you work with a lot of startups, a lot of agency owners, and a lot of well-established businesses. What would be your advice to like them? Because we're facing a similar thing internally about potentially giving a piece of equity to a our CTO, and it's something we want to do. And we feel like more money at this point isn't like, it's nice, but it's like he wants to be an owner. He wants to have that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think I have reasonably good advice here. So bifurcate this into sort of two chapters, right? So there's kind of the chapter you guys are in today, right? So first piece of advice will be for this chapter, and then later on. So the later on is pretty easy. When you get big and legit, we've been giving equity out we give equity. In fact, I think we just changed this, but up until recently, we give equity to every single person who walks through the door. And now we're big enough now where, unfortunately, what happens is the value of that equity ceases to. Ironically, I think it's still quite valuable in and of itself, but it ceases to be valuable to the person walking in the door. They're not looking for it. They're not interested in. They'd rather have more pay. Like if I had asked them, "You want equity or more pay?" I'll take it. I'll take more pay. So that's what we're doing there. But in your chapter, and this is the chapter I was in, it was very easy. I mean, Varun had equity from the day he walked in the door, but it was and this is what I learned from my past. Partnerships and I've seen this a lot actually, partnerships blow up all the time. So what I highly recommend people do is plan for the divorce before they get married. And, and in a real marriage, that tends to be a little more difficult because you're in love, but with a business partner, it's a little easier. So the way it worked was I looked at it like this. I never wanted an even split in the vote. So I refused to give, majority equity. I always held majority. Then from there, I always gave equity immediately out of the gate with a plan for that person to get out. Because my assumption was there would be a day when I would still have my heart in it and this person would want to get the heck out. And they needed to know before they started how that would work. And so essentially the way it worked was, hey, listen, you get this amount of equity, but the day you want to walk away, all your equity converts to a loan payable, and I'll pay you out with cash on hand between 1 and 10 years, assuming cash is available, whatever, at my discretion. But what I didn't want that equity to continue to age, and for that person to, if I was going to stay in it and kill myself, and I was willing to do what it took, I didn't want that person to be able to benefit from that. And luckily in our case, that never came to pass. But although ironically, that's actually how it works in the real world. So when you get big and you get private equity investors and all this other stuff, and you bring on big corporate execs down the line, that's actually how it works. There's always a stock buyback clause, so that if people walk, they have to either, in some cases, buy their stock back, but you as the company have first right oftentimes to buy it out from them. And the whole reason for that is because if you don't want people showing up, to Facebook on day one, getting a bunch of equity and then leaving, and then, years and years in the future, that value of their equity continues to climb while they do no work. And that's particularly important in the beginning, right? Because that is where the sweat equity and the hard work really have the most leverage and the most impact on your outcomes long-term. So you want to create a relationship where it basically is like, hey, listen, you have equity, and if you stick around, it's going to be worth a lot. If you ever want to leave, that's okay with us. We're not going to hate you for it, but just realize we're going to sort of draw a line at that moment and say, okay, well, this was your contribution. Here's what it's worth in cash. And I had to come up with a valuation strategy. And I think I just picked like 1 times revenue. And that's what it's going to be worth on that day. So you get to choose, and right up front, they all knew the deal, that they accepted it. So that was on them. And then the nice thing for me is I knew that, and I knew this, by the way, because from my perspective, when I was in these situations, I didn't have an out clause. I didn't know what was possible or not possible. And honestly, it created a lot of anger, right? What do you mean you want to leave? How dare you? How could you do this? Lots of upset feelings. And while you might be upset if someone walks, fundamentally, you want to have it all planned out so that it's like, yeah, this sucks, this stinks, but you're not going to be unhappy because you knew before you said, I want to leave, what that meant. And I knew what that meant. And now I will keep going. I'll make this company twice as valuable as that it is today. And I'm sorry that you don't want to be part of it, but at least you also now can go, maybe it's for a good reason. I don't know. Maybe they have a family issue or something. Cool. Now you have your exit and you know what you're going to get paid. And, we're kind of on the same page.
That's some really good advice. Yeah. Planning for the divorce before it happens. As somebody who's been through that, it is definitely worth considering.
And by the way, since starting HighLevel, I cannot tell you how many times I've had two people get on a Zoom call telling me how great it's going to be in their great partnership. And then a year later, they hate each other. I mean, it has happened at least 100 times. And my advice is always the same. Like, one of you should get 51% and the other person, should get some, I don't even care if you cash value that. Like, at some point, just figure out how it is that you're not going to get in a stalemate. Because because invariably the way it comes back to me is, we now hate each other. I want my HighLevel account. I want the HighLevel account. And now it's like, oh, sorry, you guys are 50-50. So you're going to have to figure something out because I'm not, it's we either split the accounts or one of you gives up or, whatever. But, there's, it's a pain in the butt. So,
didn't know you were getting into being a business divorce attorney when you started this, did you?
Well, I mean, this is what happens. People come to my doorstep telling me that, that they want me to kick their partner out of the account. And luckily for me these days, we have a very good system on how to figure all this out. But yeah, that's why I try to give this advice to everybody because, it sucks, but it happens. And, you just need to be ready for it. And it doesn't even have to be a personal thing. It doesn't have to be a catastrophic thing. Sometimes I've seen business partners look at each other and be like, yeah, he had a death in the family. I'm not angry with that person, right? It just happens.
Yeah. Life events. Sometimes it's not always nefarious intentions. It's just like, sometimes it's makes sense.
100%.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kev. Sorry.
Oh, no. I was just curious. I mean, I don't want to take up too much of your time, Shaun. You've been amazing, dude. We've been at it for a while. I do want to make sure that we touch on, like, there's a lot of exciting announcements coming out of Summit this past week.
Oh, yeah.
And what are the ones that you're most excited about, and what does next year look like? Like, what is the focus for
yeah you? So I would say that there are kind of two themes I'm most excited about. So one is the AI side, and I think voice AI is really the thing. And for me, it's inbound, because all the way back to my answering service days, I will tell you, businesses miss phone calls every single day. And what was magical about the answering service, what I fell in love with that business, why I dropped out of college to do it, is because you have no idea how much money the average small business misses in phone calls every day. And those phone calls, I swear to you, no one is calling a plumber to say, like, hey, how's it going, man? What'd you think about the game last night? Like, that's not the phone call they get, right? They're getting like hey, I have a problem. I need you to come out. I want to give you my money. That's what these calls all are about. And if you can simply just pick up the phone, and this was what great about the answering service and why AI is going to crush this. The answering service wasn't magic. We didn't know like the price of this or the way this works. Like, none of that. We would just be like, no matter what you said, you could call and be like, my hair is on fire. We'd be like, no problem. Let me give me your name and number, and we'll have someone get back to you right away. It didn't matter, right? But it worked. And here's why it worked. It kept the consumer from calling the next person down the line, because they felt like they'd gotten a solution. Like, okay, I checked that off. Because the thing to remember is the person on the other side who's calling into the plumber, they have 100 freaking things to do that day. They just need to check it off the list. Like, I got the plumber. Okay, good. Now I can go to work, or now I can go pick up my kids, or now I can go take the dog to the whatever, right? That's how they're thinking. And so, yeah. And so the inbound voice AI is really going to be a receptionist feature. It's something you could sell to any small business. It's a foot in the door. It's a great lead off offer. It's awesomeness, right? So that for me is very exciting for that reason. So that's theme number one. Theme number two is a ton of the things that we released are really taking what I would sort of say has been like a lot of Lego pieces and really making it into a much more kitted kind of thing. It's a much more mature product because of a lot of these enhancements. It's like before it'd be like something silly like, someone filled out a form. I want to send an email of all the form fields that got filled out. Okay, well, so what you got to do is you build a form, and then you got to jump over the workflows, and you got to create a workflow, and you got to add a trigger that says on form submit, and then you got to put a filter that says when it's this form, and then you hit the send email action. Like, that's a lot of stuff, right? So could HighLevel send it? Of course they could, but boy, was that a pain in the butt, right? But now it does exactly what you want it to do, which is, hey, automatically when a form's filled out, send a list of the form fields to this email address or these email addresses. And then if you want to customize that email, right there on the silly page, you hit the edit button, the email pops up, you can customize it. So can you still go crazy, use workflow to do that? Sure. But now is there a much easier way to do that the way you want it? Absolutely. And so imagine 300 of those. And then this really leads into next year, because really, if you think about what we're doing here, and this is the most important thing, we are attacking together, not by ourselves, not at HighLevel, but together as partners. We are attacking every big CRM system out there, and we are making massive gains. You name a CRM system, we are pulling customers from those people, and we're going to do a lot more of this. And so for me, what we're finding is that the maturity steps are getting us all the most gains. And the reason why is simple. It's because when you finally stand in front of that business owner and say, you're paying $3,000 a month for that? That's nuts. What if you could pay 97 or not 197 or whatever the heck you want to charge? And then that person sees the system, uses the system, when the buttons all are where they want them to be and the steps are as simple as they want them to be and all of that, it's helping you make the sale and retain the customer. And so that for me is what's super exciting about what we're doing, is we're really just taking all of these things that as pieces are powerful enough to compete with the best of systems. And now we're bringing the UX and UI focus in and just making them simpler to get to those outcomes and really starting to recognize a lot of the power of the system. And honestly, we already have a lot more features than most of those other products. And so we're already in a better spot. And, there's a lot of cool, and we're now to the point where everything that we're doing, you almost have to be like, like there's a niche for each thing. So like we just came out with custom objects, which for the right person is like the most amazing thing. But for some people, they're like, what the heck is a custom object? Or, we'll come up with SIP endpoints, which most people won't know what that means, but what that will translate to is the ability to do hard phones for a lot of people. So we're starting to get into a lot of those cool things. And we have, an RCS, which a lot of people don't know, is coming on the horizon and will be here by the end of the year. And RCS is literally a messaging standard that works both on the iPhone and Android seamlessly. And as of iOS 18, it's now in every iPhone. So what does that mean? That means that I can send rich messaging, like an iMessage, to either an Android user or an iPhone user through RCS. So things like this, these will just slowly roll out. And some of these things will be invisible to people. Some of these things will be huge deals to people. But the nice thing is, again, it's all about maturity at each level and kind of going deeper and making the app just simpler, easier, and better to use.
Yeah, love it. And, for the smart SaaS people in your community, right? Like I've watched, and you know better than I do, I've watched entire companies be built off of a new feature Shaun launched, right?
Oh yeah.
And that is an incredible thing, right? I've watched it
firsthand. I've watched people sell their businesses for 10 million plus off the back of the businesses
one feature that you created, right?
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, it's awesome. That's the wonderful thing. That's why we created SaaSpreneurs and the idea of being a SaaSpreneur, and that's why we're pretty adamant about it, because for me, I think that is exactly how you build a business. You find something where you can create a very scalable model that's not in and of itself a tool, but it's technology enabled, right? So you're not down here doing bespoke custom service. You're not up here trying to sell like a hammer or saw, like a tool. You're in the middle where you're taking those tools and you're creating something that's systematized that you can box out and then scale up to tens of thousands of users. And that's what we've seen people do quite successfully.
Yeah, man. I noticed that you guys are doing that on the inside. We were, with what's all that's happening, we launched a new community, for, I don't know if we can drop it on here, but the partnership that we have with you guys now. And so
for sure.
There, what we did was I logged in last night. Kevin and I were up till midnight creating a new community for the whole launch. And and I was noticing like you guys embedded the welcome email feature within the settings. So you didn't have to go into the email templates and pull it up and edit it and all that. It's like I could edit it so it's like consolidating these features for more of a like you might need these things when you go to do these things. So we're just going to put it in a little pop-up section that you have easy access to the other features that you're probably going to need as well. And so like making it more of a flow is like, I've noticed you guys have already started doing that. So like,
yeah. And and so it's weird because, we're at that stage where like, that's what we're focused on. And it doesn't really make for exciting podcasting sometimes. Right. Or, it's like, it's, the Shaun coming at you with, we made the button in the better place. Yeah. Like that doesn't really like pop. Right. But in reality, it actually is what drives awesome outcomes for people, because it's just those things.
The right people.
Yeah, well, and it's one of those things where you're trying to make the product what you always wanted it to be, which is this thing that, of course, it works. It just works, and yeah, that's kind of boring because that's the point. It just works. You don't have to do yet another thing and figure out how to do it and really go read a manual or whatever. It's just easy and it's intuitive and obvious. But I think that's what makes great products great.
Well, before we start to get into the end zone of the podcast here, I did want to share very very briefly like what we're most excited for as far as like coming into the community and helping contribute. We built our business on some other lateral companies who offered chatbot and voice AI services slowly. We had a client the other day. He explained the concept of the leading edge and the bleeding edge. Meaning like you'll have these like way out left field companies that go and pioneer something like voice AI. You have like Air, SynthFlow, Vapey, Simple Talk. Like there's so many of them now. And we've bought and spent a lot of money to pioneer those things. And then we did the same thing with the chatbot providers. But then what we noticed was that just selling like the one-off chat AI or a voice AI subscription is still like a commoditized offer. It's like you're just selling a product. You're not selling a solution or a transformation. Rather, that's like solving multiple steps in the sales process that's going to enhance your customer's ability to produce revenue. It's like it was just up until we hired a coach who kind of introduced this concept of creating a transformational offer, charging a little higher ticket for it, but being able to string together the functionalities of different voice and chat AI into a full cohesive system. And, we have our own spin on that. It's our flagship offer called the AI Sales Team. But like basically it's like, hey, look, AI, yeah, it's going to be taking over. But these roles in the sales process are still going to need to be filled. The only difference is having your salespeople focus on 80% of the leads that are just tire kickers and, window shoppers, or being able to focus on the 20% of people that are ready to make a decision and being able to target your sales team efforts on that. And that seems to be like the number one thing that resonates with the businesses that we've worked with so far in the past 18 months, doing over 100 custom builds for AI setups, is this higher level concept. I can't remember who it was, but it's like, higher letter of the law. And that's the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law. That's what it is. It's like, it's the spirit of the outcome that we're trying to produce rather than the technicalities of it. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of how we've positioned ourselves.
Sell the hole, not the drill. That's how I say it.
What is it?
Sell the hole, not the drill.
Yeah.
I love that. So yeah, we noticed like out the box, the voice AI and the chat AI with Go HighLevel is phenomenally well. And it just lowered the barrier to entry because, man, I cannot tell you how many hours we used to spend putting together these voice and chat agents, just like tweaking them, going through all the iterations and stuff. And now it lowered the barrier to entry for somebody to get started and start going to a business and start selling something. They could literally go and charge $20K for what you guys have put in there that they get, for a very stupid price. So I'm respectfully.
We'll actually have a big announcement on that, but we're going to make that price even better tomorrow or Monday.
Yeah, we'll let you share the thunder on that one.
We're super excited. We're super excited to be a part of this with you guys. If you want to actually make an official announcement right here, and we can, have our subscribers and listeners.
Oh, well, So, for us, I think what's super exciting is that I think that there's this great role to play to helping people get these things done right. And invariably, I think there's so much value here. And to me anyways, it feels like almost a resurgence of an old idea, but we used to all really, we sort of had humans doing everything at one point, and then we just sort of assumed that like computers and software would take over. And I think there's this beautiful hybrid in the middle where, again, software is just a tool. And without great people like you guys to come in and actually help make it work, it's never going to be its best. And you can always, like every great tool, it's also about the operator. And can you outclass somebody with that same tool? And it's really and it's expertise that does it, right? And I think with you guys coming into our community and helping people set up all of these things and do it right out of the gate, I mean, we're super excited about it because we know that on the technology side, on the tool side, it's a great tool. But just because I go to Home Depot today and I say, oh, give me your best table saw, that doesn't mean I'm making a house, right? That just isn't going to happen. It's the expertise that matters. And so I love that we're fortunate enough to have you guys who have a lot of expertise doing this come in under those tools and really make them work for people. And again, create that outcome that everybody who uses it is looking for. And I think get them to success a lot faster. And I think, again, it is also, I think what's super great about this is it's a moving target, right? Every day it's going to change a little bit, and you guys are the experts. You're focusing on it. So as you're implementing your learning and you're taking those learnings, you're passing it on to the next person, and it's funny that you brought up the law thing. The reason I think that a lot of times why you hire the more expensive attorney isn't because that you like to spend more money, and it isn't even because they do stuff from scratch. They might even go to their desk drawer and pull out the contract and charge you an obscene amount for a contract they wrote 10 years ago. But the difference is that one's been gone to court 10 times and they know it always wins. Yeah. So really what you're doing is you're paying for the outcome. And you should really get over how it happens. It's irrelevant. The point is you don't want to pay the cheaper guy who's like, well, I remember there was a class I took in law school. Let me go read about this, or let me go try this out. You don't want to be that guy. You want to be the one where it's like, I've had the bullet-proof, time-tested version of this, and that's exactly what you guys are bringing to our community. So we're really excited about it.
Wow, I'm super grateful for that. That was great. I appreciate it a lot. We're super excited. Sure. Wow. All right. I'm speechless. Appreciate it. Yeah, man. I mean, Joshua and I, it started off, we became accidental experts at this, just trying to solve an internal problem on the sales team that we ran. Right. And, we spent like 10 months, just chopping away at this thing and trying to figure it out, and then realize like, this is way bigger than what we're trying to solve here internally on this team. Let's go out and do it on our own. And that, that was like, from February of last year to like say November of last year. And then when the OpenAI API integration came out, things just took off. And the opportunities they're like, oh, you guys are already experts at this. We're like, yeah, by accident, but we're here. Right. And so, yeah, we're, we just right place, right problem, right time. And it's just continued to like steamroll from there. So we're super excited for this next stage of our, partnership with you guys.
And we've already got some exciting 100%. Stuff planned to roll out. We've got a ton of use cases for the voice AI already built out. So we're going to be dropping some pretty advanced training into the community. I plan on recording it today, depending on it, if our team gets it rolled out. So you should be seeing some stuff from us in the community very shortly.
Can't wait.
All right, man.
Let's do it.
Love it. Well, what a great way to wrap up the podcast, man. This is
I agree.
Love it. Hey, Shaun.
Now I can go eat breakfast.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for the opportunity 100%. To connect on the perfect day to have the podcast, right?
Agreed.
Love
100%.
it. Awesome. This has been awesome.
Thanks so much,
guys.
Shaun.
Absolutely, man.
All right. See you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.